a flashback of his brother and sister, brutally slain by an umbrella. It sounds less goofy with context. The main character is Hyoma Kunato, an exorcist who fights against Tsukumogami. But what is a Tsukumogami? In Japanese folklore, when an inanimate object has served its purpose for 100 years, it receives a soul and becomes both alive and self-aware. The depiction of these Tsukumogami can vary wildly, from taking on a human form indistinguishable from a normal human to outright yokai monsters, like the Bakezori sandal, Kasa Obake umbrella, and Chochin Obake paper lantern. But back to the story. Hyoma is out with his grandfather, sealing Tsukumogami and treating them with proper respects. Or, well, his grandfather is. Hyoma has chosen violence ever since his older siblings were murdered, and he is a ruthless fighter, because he hates Tsukumogami. But his grandfather is getting fed up with how violent Hyoma has become. Not all Tsukumogami are dangerous, but that doesn't matter to the kid. So to help rehabilitate Hyoma from this deep-seated hate, he's being sent to live with a family of Tsukumogami all serving a single human. Her name is Botan Nagatsuki, and she's very, very special. He's greeted by Haori and Kushige, while the other four arrive shortly after he does: Kagami, Suzuri, Yu, and Nagi. Immediately the mood is hostile since Hyoma doesn't trust a single one of them, and Nagi, being the asshole he is, can't help but start shit. They fight, and Hyoma shows his door poles are more than capable of destroying Nagi. But why door poles? Well, the show will explain that to you eventually. More deep folklore. Mid-fight, Botan is on her way home early, and the Tsukumogami all try to stop the fighting before she gets there, by attacking Hyoma. Botan tries to smooth things over, but Hyoma's stark personality makes it awkward to impossible. For anyone other than Hyoma, it would seem like a mostly normal and welcoming home, but for him and his hate, he treats the whole situation as heretical, and that really pisses Botan off. She gives Hyoma 3 days to either change his attitude or leave, but Hyoma knows being kicked out means he'll also get disowned. Kinda ham-fisted for setting up character growth, but let's just see how it goes. Meanwhile, Botan is questioning whether she was too harsh or not. Now Hyoma's out with Nagi hunting Tsukumogami together to provide a measure of growth, with the next day bringing a mission with Kagami and Suzuri, showing us that Ink Boy is a bit of a player and Hyoma really doesn't like it, while Kagami confuses him by acting human. It's just as much character introduction for them as it is Hyoma's growth. And the one they're out to meet today isn't for a fight, it's a Yagan who wants to live with humans. Kagami shows off some of what she can do, and though Yagan passes the inspection, she gets violent after hearing the name Nagatsuki. It appears Botan Tsukumogami have a reputation. But Hyoma subdues her, and Suzuri brings back the peace before splitting the party, Hyoma earning the acceptance of half of the resident Tsukumogami now. And by the next day, it seems that even Haori and Kushige have signed on for Hyoma, leaving just Yu, so you know that one's gonna be rough. Even Botan seems to be warming up to Hyoma after hearing about him from the others, and, of course, Hyoma's now on the job with Yu, who's more than capable by herself and makes it known she does not want Hyoma around. She takes the direct approach and wants a fight, for a simple, clean outcome. This draws attention to both allies and enemies, specifically the ones that are hunting the Nagatsuki. And Hyoma isn't trying to destroy or seal Yu, so he's clearly at a disadvantage. He may show some pretty rapid growth at this point, but it's only weird if you think he's an idiot. He's not. Gotta love competent MCs. And right when the moment of levity presents itself, the Nagatsuki and their hunters show up, with Hyoma seemingly out of the fight before it even starts. It's a 4v4, but everything goes sideways when the leader of the trash mobs admits to having gotten bored of hunting humans. It activates Hyoma like a fucking Terminator, his deep hatred for Tsukumogami taking over. It's no longer about capture. Hyoma is destroying them and he's going to enjoy it. It's a pretty impactful moment showing us just how powerful he is. And he's not even at his best. But he somehow manages to convince Yu and collect all 6 names, and it even seems that Botan is actually pretty excited that he'll be staying. Which means it's now time for story exposition by Haori to why Hyoma was sent to live with them. It's something like an arranged marriage between him and Botan. This is when we're told that the Nagatsuki Tsukumogami are a set of Troseo. Troseu? French word. So their literal purpose is to find Botan a suitable husband. And while Hyoma responds with his typical cold rationality, he's quietly freaking out. You can't escape the rom-com, even in a supernatural action series. And even with the awkwardness between them, Hyoma still comes to Botan's rescue, and we get moments of bonding between the two. And that's how Season 1 goes, character introductions and world building, so that we can understand both who the heroes and villains are and the dynamic between the main characters. It builds intrigue and foreshadowing about who and what Botan is, with a questionable extended system of Tsukumogami who all seem to be aligned with the peacekeeping faction rather than having a dedicated antagonist. As you can expect, this leads to conflict, and that's before the other clans begin to show up. To that end, I should probably explain Botan. She's an existence that, on a metaphysical level, attracts Tsukumogami to her for better and worse. Haori explains that a Tsukumogami is when an object is given life by a Marebito, a visiting god, but Botan is what happens when a Marebito blesses a human, a Yorimashi, a god-possessed vessel. And while the majority of Season 1 is about the daily lives at Nagatsuki, there are a few important characters introduced late into the season, such as Tsubaki, a potential love rival for Botan, and an umbrella Tsukumogami makes a brief appearance. Season 2 is where the real story picks up, and it starts with a banger opening, Tagatame by Megaterra Zero. It keeps the theme of the early character building, but this time it's with flashbacks to Hyoma's brother and sister, followed by a parade to introduce a trio of instruments before returning to flashbacks of when Hyoma lost his family, laying the groundwork for the umbrella villains to show up, and teasing that something is going to happen with Botan. Authored by Onigunso, the manga published from April 2014 to June 2023, and it concluded at 100 chapters, a nice round number. Then from January to March 2023 would air Season 1 of the anime, with July to September of the same year airing the second season, both running 12 episodes each, crafted by Bandai Namco Pictures, the studio that famously made Gintama, as well as Rock is a Lady's Modesty, Wistoria, and Welcome to Demon School. The premise of Mononogatari is fairly unique in anime. Tsukumogami are usually lumped together in a yokai-focused series, but aren't given much thought, with the only other example I can think of for focusing on Tsukumogami being Tsugumomo. So it's pretty neat to see such a broad take on how objects given souls can manifest depending on not just what they are, but how they're treated. And therein lies the biggest wall for non-Japanese viewers, the deep cultural significance of the Tsukumogami. All of them have names based on what they are, so if you can't read kanji and don't know what each specific item is being referred to, then you'll be stuck waiting for an explanation, if you even get one. Which goes to another point. There is currently only Japanese dub for the series, so you're stuck reading subs on this one. But that's not a bad thing for a story and setting that is pure Japanese. It would be odd trying to adapt it for an outside market, especially when it comes to the internal politicking by the good guy factions. And one thing Mononogatari does very well is the pacing. Hyoma doesn't change too quickly, and Botan doesn't really change at all since she just doesn't need to. And even though the arranged marriage thing starts off as kind of a joke, it becomes more and more true as the series builds, with all of the build up to both the reveal of who the BBEGs are and their goal. And of course it involves Botan because she's the MacGuffin. But that also leads to a bit of a frustrating point for the series. Season 2 ends without a resolution. It's completely open for another season, of which there isn't one. So you can either start reading the manga or get comfortable waiting for Season 3 that might not happen for a very long time. If ever. I am the NBT. This has been the Noble Weeaboo. Like or don't, sub or don't, and thank you for watching. Mononogatari is both a fun and suspenseful story about one of the less explored and explained yokai of Japan. It's worth your time and you'll be pleasantly surprised by it.